Good evening, all. Thank you for joining in. We have Mr. Suraj Kaeley on the call. So, he's the veteran in the mutual fund industry. He would be taking up the topic for today. In the next 5 minutes, we can start with the session then.
So we'll wait another 5 minutes, right, to start?
Yes, sure. We can start by 4 5 if that is fine.
Sure, perfect. Thank you.
No problem. Everyone, welcome to NGEN Markets webinar that we are conducting today. So today's topic will be a bit different. We have Mr. Suraj Kaeley, who is an ex group president of UTI. He would be taking us to through a topic on client acquisition. So yes, so you can continue then.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much. I think I'll just put the presentation on. I hope I can share my screen. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. So thank you very much for joining in. In fact, I see a couple of my very old friends also on the call. So it's nice to see their names and recollect their faces. So what I'll do today is I'll be sharing with you a presentation on a book that I wrote recently. The book is titled The Ultimate Client Acquisition System for Financial Advisors. And the whole idea of doing this book was that uh, what I find is in our industry, right? So today there are about 300,000 plus ARN holders, and and this number I get from basically if you apply to AMFI today for a new ARN, I think that's the series which is going on some 3,15,000 odd. But interestingly, when you look at the number of advisors or mutual fund distributors who are more than 100 crores, you will find that that number is less than 3,000, right? So, which means that very few of the mutual fund distributors are able to scale up. And whenever I have conversed with them on this subject of scale up, one of the big issues that everybody struggles is client acquisition. So basically, when you really go through my presentation, you will see that it is not really something like just a textbookish kind of stuff where you just listen and I say, okay, it was interesting or not interesting. It is actually a framework that you can practically implement. So what I will do today is in the next 35 to 40 minutes, I'll try to complete my presentations, and then we'll take it up for Q&A. Because if I do it in between, I'm sure you'll have many questions as I go through this presentation. But if we open up in between, then I do see there'll be a lot of challenge in terms of the timing that we have on hand. So let's get started. Essentially, the agenda is, I take you through my philosophy. Uh, I take you through the three steps, which I think are very important, and that's why I call it a system when it comes to client acquisition, and a few, concluding remarks. So, in terms of my background, I've been in the mutual fund industry for a very long time. Though I started in financial services in 1988 with HDFC Limited, but then I moved on to the mutual fund industry in 1996. I was the eighth employee to join Franklin Templeton in India, and then I worked with Fidelity. And my last role was with UTI as a group president, national sales head, sales and marketing head there. I decided to give up my corporate world somewhere in 2019, and since then, I created a couple of courses. One was called the Sales Accelerator. The Sales Accelerator is a B2B course, but the B2C one is what I've titled as the Ultimate Client Acquisition System for Financial Advisors, and I also created a course on retirement, which of course I've not really spoken much about, but hopefully you'll see a book on that subject soon as well. So before I take you through the system, I thought I must share with you, how I think client acquisition happens and how business is really built. And typically, if you look at this framework, and this framework was actually taken from a gentleman called Simon Bowen, who is an Australian and runs the models method. and then the rest of the parts, what you see here, was really added by me. So essentially, all of you have been in the business and have been meeting, prospects and clients on a regular basis. What you will find is that, before somebody buys from you, they go through some kind of a process, and this triangle here really represents that process. So the largest part, which is the base of the triangle, is, before even they listen to your story, they need to really like you, trust you, respect you, and believe you. And that is true also of liking you, trusting you, respecting you, and believing your company as well. And let me just illustrate this with a simple example. My son also is a mutual fund distributor, and so when he set up this business about 7 years back, he felt that because I was from the industry, it'd be very easy for him to raise assets. And what I told him was that yes, that's true, because I know several people, and I can help you. But in reality, when you meet with them, because some of them are very large. In fact, one of my close friends was managing almost 1,000 crore portfolio himself, a personal portfolio of 1,000 crores. I said they are going to, first of course, check out on you, which I think, being my son, you don't have a problem there. But they will ask you this question: okay, so tell me about your firm. And now at that point in time, the answer from him would be like, okay, it's only me and my dog, because there was nobody else in the company. And then obviously, when you ask where are you operating from, he says, okay, I'm operating from home. Now, though they may like the person, but they may really not like the company. And typically, you what you would get as a sale at that point in time is more of a favor. That money will not really last. So so many a times, we forget that even before you open up to any client, they will have this in mind, that do they like you and your company. Once they go through this process and say, okay, this person is worth talking to, that's the time really you present your idea, whatever you have in mind, and the conversation that you go through in that space. So typically, when they look at your product and service, they have two questions: will this work, or will this work for me? So they ask two questions there. And after this conversation is over, really comes, do I want to do direct, regular plans, comparison with other options? So value comes in much later. And then after that, again, there's a pause, right? And many times we think that pause is a no. But reality is the client needs time to think through that if they have to allocate money to you, where are they going to raise the funds from? And they may not want to open up with you at that point in time. And you keep wondering that the person said yes, and why is the person not buying? So obviously there's no deadline in the mind of the client, so you may want the sale to close faster, but many a times I've seen that sales also falter there. So I'm sure if you're in the industry for a long time, which some of you are, you have gone through this whole process, and I felt that this model really captured it very well. And then of course you have the sale, and then we have the next step of deepening our relationships. So we always say, okay, can we upsell and cross sell? My personal view is that cross selling is rather difficult, upsell is much easier. Again, a good example here is, let's assume there's a tea vendor who does a great job of making good tea, and somebody tells him, why don't you sell coffee? Now, when you add coffee, the tea drinker is not going to have coffee. The set of drinkers who really have coffee is somebody else. So from a deepening of a relationship standpoint, to expect that the tea drinker will drink coffee, that's difficult. And I'm sure some of you have graduated from funds to PMS to AIF, and would have experienced that as you change different investment platforms, that people struggle actually as you maneuver from a product category to the other. And then, of course, what we forget is that the client can also be a source of great referrals. And referrals come to really in two forms. One is passive, where you're getting referrals on your own accord, so you don't even ask for it and you get it. And active is, which is a skill, that when you ask for a referral and you get one. So basically, when I built my model and I wrote my book, this is the background, or this is the kind of thinking I had in mind. And essentially, then I really moved ahead and said, okay, let's see how we can really address all these issues and see what is a great way to acquire clients and grow business on a sustainable basis. So essentially, from starting from the end in mind, if the way I would like to put it, if I were to ask you this question, that why is it that you're in the business, and what is your vision or aim for yourself, the the first part of the answer generally is about the scale you want to accomplish. So depending on your aspiration, desire, the kind of clients you service, you may say I want to be at 100 crores, 250 crores, 500 crores, 1000 crores, that kind of number you get. But equally important is that you don't want to stagnate at those numbers, right? So you also want a stream of interest referrals coming in. So if I ask you that what is success in the business, chances are you say, okay, I have the scale, I do great client service, my clients are very happy, and not only that, I also get a consistent flow of referrals. And essentially, you have to really graduate from what you're doing today to that kind of a scenario. So the process that you do, to accomplish this is what this book was also all about, and my presentation today is also about the same. And if you get the nuances of what does it take to really create that dream business, I think I would have accomplished a lot today. So let's start with the three steps. So the first step is very obvious, which is defining your best clients. And so you can say these are your target group, an ideal client group. You can use whatever vocabulary you are comfortable with. But what I find is that the understanding of this piece is really not there. So many a times, when I talk to MFDs, I found that they are actually going after the wrong target, and that's where they struggle. The second part is how do we then find them. And so I have developed an active referral technique, so I'll talk about that as well in this step. And third is, despite all the efforts, you have to build a kind of a rhythm in terms of staying engaged with clients. So that is where how do we really stay engaged is your step 3. So the first step is very clear, that we want to look at get our best clients. And so this slide really highlights that not everyone is your client, right? So and my view is that people who derive the greatest benefit from what you have to offer, right, they are the best clients, because if they see the benefits that you're offering, that is the time they will really give you business. And if that offering is not there, then if the benefits are not perceived, then they don't work with you. And the best way to look at this is not keep it as a theoretical concept, but look at it from a practical standpoint. So as I mentioned, I'm not doing an interactive session today, but typically whenever I do a session and I interact on the subject, my favorite question to the audience always has been that, for rest of the presentation, let's wear this hat of a retirement specialist. Right now, if you're a retirement specialist, right, and so obviously there is an offering that you have on hand, who among these profiles would be your best client? Right. So the first profile here is a senior private sector executive. Now take here an example of a vice president marketing in Colgate, right? The person operates out of Mumbai, and 49 years old, very successful, and working with this multinational Colgate. Take another profile, again a senior public sector executive, maybe a person is a director with HPCL, right? And the person has a pensionable job, right? So that's another segment. So very senior, good profile, but works for Hindustan Petroleum as a director. The third category, we all know professionals like doctors, lawyers, architects. So all the professionals can be clubbed in this category. So this is another persona that you can set. And actually, you can create individual personas of doctors, lawyers, architects, because they behave very differently. Here, I've just clubbed all of them as professionals. And then there are small business owners. So let's assume there's a person who runs a very successful restaurant. And now, if I ask you, if you're a retirement specialist, who among these four would be the most ideal? And interestingly, I've got actually responses which cover straddle all the four personas. But in reality, in my opinion, actually the senior private executive is the best persona. And the reason I say that is because typically, if you are working in the private sector and you're not earning pension, then you have to really save for yourself, enough money for your retirement. So typically, in a city like Mumbai, if you're earning, anywhere less than 1.5 lakhs, it's very difficult to survive. Now, if you need a cash flow of 1.5 lakhs every month, you need a corpus of at least about 4 to 5 crores, right? And out of those 4 to 5 crores, it's very easy for you to maybe get as a mutual fund distributor maybe 2 crores or 2.5 crores. So obviously this kind of a profile can be brilliant. But now if you contrast it with the public sector executive, who has a pensionable job. Now, because the person has a pension, I've seen that they genuinely don't take any interest in investing. And because of that reason, and because they're getting a pension, their view is, okay, can you give me a guaranteed return product? Can you give me an assured return product? And in the end, you will see a lot of allocation will go into products like Pradhan Mantri Vay Yojana or some annuity product, and they will not be very open to really buying equity oriented products. Some of them, of course, would be happy to do it, but a portion of it. But clearly, once you have a pensionable job, your corpus itself may also not be very large. So if you look at the salary structure in the government, what you will see is that the basic on which you calculate your retirals, that is a very small amount. So even though the person would have worked in the company for 20, 30 years, but the investment corpus would not be very large. Yes, it is meaningful, but not large enough for to say that okay, that's the ideal clientele. Now, when you go to the third category, like doctors, lawyers, architects, what you will find is that these individuals, yes, they believe that they will not retire at all. In fact, doctors believe that they learn much more when they are 70, 65. So is the case with lawyers, right? So again, as a retirement specialist, they don't even relate to that word. So, do they need passive income? The answer is yes. Do you want to talk to them and present to them an idea that look how they can generate a parallel income? All those are valid thoughts. But if you look at it from a very core perspective, right, you'll find that as a retirement specialist, these will be very challenging to deal with. Typically, my experience with some of the professionals has been that the biggest problem they have is they don't have time on hand, right? So they want you to tell the story very quickly. That's the number one requirement they have. And lastly, I'm talking of the small business owner, and they believe they'll never retire because they'll run the business forever. So though all of them need retirement in some form, but if I were to ask you who derives the greatest value from what you have to offer as a retirement specialist, chances are the answer would be the senior private sector executive. But typically we have all gone through a need based selling kind of a training. So as a result, we believe that okay, I can ask questions, and then there are anything feedback that I get, that is an objection, and we can position and answer those. But that is really taking the long route. So what I want to highlight here is that understanding where you add the greatest value is very important. And sometimes the value may not be in terms of the products we are doing. It can also be, for example, the community from where you belong, because you relate to that community. I know of one MFD in Mumbai, and he services only Sindhi businessmen, right? Because that's the community he's grown up with, and he understands, what they think, how they think, and he finds it very easy to deal with them and position their various products. So that's the first step which I really talk about, that when you're thinking of building a business and you want to scale up, figuring out that one or two segments where you see you can add great value and also can give you great results, that becomes the starting point of really building your business in terms of client acquisition. So the second part which I really talk about is, we all know about the ABC classification, right? So I have introduced two more categories there, the A plus and Z. Now, essentially, the reason I've done that is, a Z category means that the person you just don't want to deal with. And it could be for reasons of size, or it could be also reasons of how they deal with you. Similarly, you will find that when you look at your book, the top 4, 5, 10 clients, they contribute almost 50, 60% of your business. Now, we don't want to mix them up with the A category because they are so large. So we want to identify them separately, and that's why we call it A plus. So the way you do this assessment is that, so on one hand, you have the great and good clients, right, who benefit the most from what you have to offer. They buy regularly, they buy profitable products, they have large volume, they give you respect and treat you as an expert, right? And on the other hand, if somebody does not give you respect, treat you as a vendor, you can classify them as C and Z, because they really don't really add great value to your life. Now, the way I really built this is, I said, okay, let's take this one step ahead and make it into some kind of a science. And we all have heard of the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule. So we know that 20% of your clients give you 80% of the business, and the balance 80%, typically give you the balance 20. Now, what I did here is I just did one more iteration of this, the 80-20. So if you do an iteration of on the top 20% clients in 80-20 iteration, you'll find that the top 4% of clients are giving you 64% of the business, right? And now this may not be exact 64. What it says is that there is some asymmetry that exists, and that's what we are trying to leverage. And similarly, if you look at the bottom 64% of the clients, they are only giving you about 4% of your business. So even if you lose all this 64%, right, there's no impact on your business. And so one of the reasons, what I found that why MFD struggle to build their businesses, that when you start your business, you're willing to take on everybody as your client, and then you find it very difficult to wean them away. And because they don't grow in scale, they remain small, but they do absorb a lot of your time. And then eventually, if you really want to grow, you will have to really figure out a way of weaning out the Z category. So whenever I've discussed on how do you wean away people, obviously if somebody calls you, you can't say you're Z and I can't service you, but you're not going to take an initiative to really increase business with them. And that judgment call is very important. The other aspect I want to highlight here is that whenever clients start, they may start small, right? So they may start as a C and eventually they become BNA. So the way you do this exercise is that typically if you take a list down all your clients, the next step is to where they are currently in terms of size, you can classify them as ABC and also put a potential column. So thereby you know that okay, I have a client who's currently C, but I think they can become A or A plus. And also you may find that there are some A clients or A plus clients you don't want to work because they are very painful, and you may want to classify in terms of potential as Z, that I would ideally want to get rid of them. So that is how really that is where you really start. So so just to summarize, the first step is really defining the best client. So the one aspect is defining on basis of what value you add. The second is in terms of size. And as I mentioned, the way you free up time for yourself is by giving up on Z and working, spending that time with A and A plus. So I'll move to the second part of the process, where we are now going to figure out how do we get these people, right? Because ultimately, even if you identify your ideal profile, how should you do that? And in my opinion, of course, the referrals are extremely important, and we'll discuss this maybe in our Q&A session also a little bit. But let me just tell you, how exactly you can use this part of the framework to identify and get these new clients. So typically when it comes to prospecting, because that is the way we go about and getting new clients, we generally use three kinds, or broadly all prospecting techniques can be classified in three kinds. So the first one is cold calling, right? So in cold calling, you're reaching out to strangers. So typically, if you're doing a emailer, you're building your LinkedIn profiles, you're doing call out on phone, whichever way you're doing. But if you're reaching out to strangers, we really call it cold calling. And we all know from experience that cold calling has very low conversion ratios. And not only that, the kind of clients that you get also may not be really meaningful in size. But because we don't find anything else to any other method to really acquire clients, so many of us still rely on cold calling as a subject. But in the system that I share here, the most strongest way to express that system is to say that you will never do cold calling again, right? Because that's the stage you really reach if you're very, very successful, and that's where you want to get to. So it is very difficult to get clients from cold calling, and if ever you do it, then you must do it at a large scale so that you get at least some results, right? So maybe from an organizational perspective, cold calling works because they're trying to really deal with hundreds and thousands of people. But when it comes to an MFD business, I think it will impinge a lot on your time, resources, and give you very little results. The second category, which popularly also called the natural market, these are affiliations, according to me, and they are either known to you, like your friends and family, or your company, which are your past clients. So they are all affiliations. So, for example, if you go to your college alumni, that also is an affiliation. So they don't know you, but they know your college, and they are willing to really have a discussion with you. In my experience, I find that affiliations are the biggest source of disappointment, and the reason for that is you have great expectations from them, and all of you have started the business. I'm sure when you started you thought that okay, I'll get business from XYZ, and you never got it, right? And then you realize, okay, I don't know why I was really not getting it. And I'm sure to some extent you would have got the answer already, because when you look at an affiliation, that person may not really fit your ideal client profile. And because they don't see value in what you bring to the table, barring the fact that they may be your well wishers or known to you, they are really reluctant to do business with you. But affiliations can be great sources to take you to your ideal market profile. So but otherwise affiliations can be challenging, and I've not really seen any great technique that people have built to convert their affiliations into business, right? So typically the way it works is you just make one or two, you meet with them, you ask for business, and if you don't get it, you forget it. You don't really, you move ahead, and that is not really the way you can get results from affiliations. Today, in the interest of time, I'll not talk about this because I want to focus on the third category, which is referrals. And essentially, when I was writing my book, I was very keen that, okay, what have others written about this subject? And I must have read some 50, 60 books on sales. And what I found was that every single book, one thing was common, that they all insisted if you have to succeed in sales, you have to get referrals. And when I really started talking to people about it, I realized that most of us are getting referrals from passively, in the sense we wait for the clients to give us referrals. We don't have even one method which really works in terms of where you ask for a referral and you get it. So I call it the active referral technique, and that's what I ended up building. So let me take you through this technique, because and it's not that you have to follow it, but what I'm saying is that if nothing else in referral works for you, you need to really maybe this is something that you can try it out. And I can assure you that it will work, because I've tested it on several people and it has given great results. So first of all, if referrals are important, you need to track whether you are getting referrals or not. So there has to be a metric in mind to know that do you really possess that skill or not. And so my benchmark there is that your goal must to get at least one referral per client per year. So as I mentioned, we classified all our clients into A plus, A, B, C, and Z. So we are excluding the Z, and the rest is what I mean by clients. So if you have, let's say, 100 clients in total, and 25 are categorized as A plus, A, B, and C, then 25 referrals is what you should aim for. And interestingly, what you will find is that when you ask for a referral, 50% of them may still not give you, but those who give you may give you more than one, right? So averaging two is actually quite possible, and hence I say that at least one referral per client per year. So if you get to this stage, then you can say you're proficient in this technique. And as I mentioned, asking for referrals and getting referrals is a skill set, and because it's a skill set, we can measure it and know how good we are. It's almost like when you play cricket, you know that if the batsman has scored runs and centuries and half centuries, then that is a good batsman. The same way here, if you're getting, let's say, one referral per client per year, you're a fantastic batsman. But if you're getting 0.75, again, you're doing well. But yeah, if you're at zero point 0.1, zero point 0.2, then I think you really need to work on this technique. Now, when you ask for referrals, you have to be sure that there are some preconditions which are met. Otherwise, chances of getting referrals are really not there. So first of all, clients need to be happy with your services. Now, how you ask this question is very important, because many a times, you may never do a customer satisfaction kind of a survey all the time. But so one way which I do this and I found gives great results is by asking the client, I've been servicing you for X years or X months. Is there anything else that you would like me to do for you right now? And many a times the clients would just say, okay, whatever you're doing is fantastic. So that's the answer for you, that your clients are happy. But you can't straight away go and say, hey, are you happy with my services? That looks a little bit odd. And you may get some very funny responses as well. But generally, when I've asked clients, okay, I've been servicing you for a while, do you want me to do anything else? I've got some great, responses there. So just to give you one example, in case of my son, one of his, clients said that you send me a monthly account statement, but I don't like the format. So can you change that? So obviously, if you would not have asked that question, we would not know if the client is happy with the service or not. Second, you can't just jump out of the blue moon and ask for a referral. Hey, I just went through a session with Suraj and he said referral is a great idea. So straight away you call. And this was a call you were doing after 8 months. You never even have spoken to the client for the last 8 months. So regular touch is also very important. And then you have to specifically ask, right? And obviously when you ask, the client must have some free time to spend with you. So the technique that I built was that if referral is so important for us, then how do we communicate the importance to a client? And the best way I felt was, how about setting a meeting, a distinct meeting with the client to just discuss about referrals? And obviously when I was telling my son to do this, he refused. He said, look, if I ask for referrals, I say I want a meeting for referrals, nobody will give me. And I agree with him that yes, nobody would give you. So the way you do that is, you tell the client that, hey, I want to spend about 25-30 minutes with you whenever you have some free time. I want to discuss something, and I'll let you know when I meet you. So you don't really disclose at that time and seek that meeting of 15 to half minutes to a half an hour. Now, when you land up there, you need to have some script, right? That how you're going to ask for a referral. And I created this active referral script, and I tested various things. And what I found was the technique that I'm sharing, or the script I'm sharing here with you, worked the best. So when I start the meeting, I say, hey, I need your help, right? And so I've underlined what's most important in the script. So now, if you don't use the word "I need your help," you will see the results are not really the same. What this does is, when you ask for help, the person becomes attentive, the person feels good that actually the person can be helpful, and it sets a very positive tone when you really ask for business. The second part is that, as you know, my business is a trust business, and hence I never approach strangers. So I rely entirely on referrals from my existing clients for growing my business. Now, this is a very powerful statement, telling them that, look, if you don't give me referrals, my business will not grow. So, and that's the reason, I've set up this meeting specially to just discuss referrals, because that's so important. And then you don't use the word referrals. You say that, I'll be delighted if you could introduce me to a couple of your friends. Now you can do it in your regional language, you can make any changes, but the what I've underlined is what you need to really ensure is part of your script. That I need your help. I don't do business, through any other means, but referrals only. And can you introduce me to a couple? So you're giving a specific number. I need two names, right? And if you're okay, I will also send you a short draft that you can use for the introduction, right? And what I've done here is, I also gave you that draft here, that, hey, hello, I have known this person for last 5 years. He's been helping me with my investments, and I feel you could also benefit. Nice if you both of you can connect and discuss anything of mutual interest. So you're not giving a long story that he's such a fantastic guy that you must meet him or buy from him, but just doing this, in earnestness. That's very, very important. And typically in a day where we use a lot of WhatsApp, I've seen that people use this message. They feel very good. Oh, I don't even have to draft a message. This is something which I'll get, and I'm happy to forward it. Now, interestingly, when you do this, you start seeing that actually, now, first of all, this technique has to be done only once, right? So, unlike, suppose you were really reaching out to clients and asking every 3 months, 6 months, hey, give me a referral, give me a referral. You don't have to do that, because you have actually done one complete meeting just discussing that, right? And our own experience was this, that when one of our clients, we went and met, the person was absolutely shocked that, look, you just came for this. And then obviously, when he understood that, yeah, this is the core for our success, then obviously we got a lot of referrals. So today, for example, my son really has done so well with this technique that he's really up to what I call the fifth generation referral. So referral, giving a referral, giving a referral, giving a referral, and giving a referral. So that has become the core of the business. So my view is that if you really want to grow your business, right, you have to crack the referral technique. And if you find this technique, or you find a better technique than this, please go ahead and use it. But most importantly, track whether you're getting the adequate number of referrals that are required to really grow your business. Otherwise, you will struggle in terms of your growth. So that is the second part of the system, that in terms of prospecting, I believe that you should not be wasting your time on cold calling. Affiliations are the next level in case referrals or other techniques don't work. But the best technique would be that eventually referrals work. And obviously, if you're new to the business, then affiliations become fairly important, and you have to figure out a way of leveraging your own contact to get introduced to a few more people, and then really set up your business. I think that becomes very important. And as you can see, that's the reason I also shared the first part of my presentation, my model, that if the buying decision is based on trust, then obviously referral ensures that the trust is built instantly. Cold calling does not build that instant trust, and that's the reason it doesn't work very much in our industry, and hence this technique becomes fairly important. So let me take you to the third part, which is equally important. That so whether it is converting a prospect to a client and improving your conversion ratio, or whether it is deepening your relationship with clients, a consistent follow up becomes very important. So so I found this very interesting chart in several books. I put that in my book as well, where why conversion rates are very low. So what you find is that when you're meeting, let's say 100 people, only 3% were to buy right away because they are convinced maybe after your first discussion, and they write a check. And I'm sure if you've been in the business, you know that actually there were very few people who just bought after the first meeting, and so that number is very close to 1 to 3%. It is in that range. But then there are some fence sitters, who will, if you interact with them for 3 to 6 months, chances are they convert. But as you can see, there are only 10% of people who buy early. Now interestingly, the balance 90% are actually in three equal groups of 30% each, right, where 30% are likely to buy later, and the balance 60 will never buy for various reasons. Either they don't have the need, or they are very happy with the current provider. But the problem is we don't know upfront, whether actually who's in which category, and that's why you need to talk to, or need to stay connected with every one of them. But the good part is that if you do this, follow-ups well, you can improve your conversion ratio from 3% to almost 40%, because there'll be the fence sitters, and also there are these individuals who are likely to buy sometime into the future, and hence staying connected becomes very important. So, in fact, there is a lot of research done on this subject, and what you find is that typically, we talk about relationship selling, but most of us drop out when the first no is given to us. That the client said no, we don't really bother to stay in touch. Then, by the time the client has said no again, 65% would have dropped out. But as you can see here, if you are able to really establish a relationship and go right to your eighth contact, right, then you are the only one who's in touch with the client. So whenever the client were to write a check, they will write it in your favor. And that's why staying engaged is very important. So the question comes that once the client has said no, how do we really stay in touch? And similarly, you already have a set of clients, so how you stay engaged with them as well. And typically, what I really talk about in terms of engagement is that we are so driven by our profession that we only call our clients generally for sales. So I call those calls as sales nudge. So every time you're meeting a client, the idea is, oh, I want some business. We don't really spend time building relationships. So I classify all the calls that we make to our clients in three buckets. The first one is called the relationship calls. So relationship calls typically are meant for building a relationship. So there's no quid pro quo. You're not expecting any business out of it. Then value added calls are where you're trying to address a specific problem of a client and need not necessarily be linked to the business that you're doing. And sales nudges when you're asking for sales. So typically, if I were to give you some examples here, relationship calls are not for sales. Their idea is to spend time there, no quid pro quo. So personal connects like birthdays, anniversaries, names of children, they're all personal connect. So a lot of people tell me, okay, if I wish a birthday, then do I tell the guy, hey, there's this PMS or AIF, do you want to buy? Now then that becomes a sales nudge, right? That's not really a relationship call. So the intent is very important. In a relationship call, you're just really staying in touch with the client. That's what you're doing. Value added calls are where you're addressing a specific problem, you're educating the client on something new. So recently, we talk about the income arbitrage fund, for example. So those are great value added calls. When COVID hit, a lot of people wanted to graduate from physical transactions to online. So that was a great value add. If you're really settling certain claims, that is an exceptional service. Really is also a great value added call. A lot of your clients, by the way, can be business guys, so you can also give them a referral and a small personal favor, right? So sometimes even those all come under the value added calls. So my view is that actually, if you're, let's say, making 12 to 14 calls with your prospects and clients every year, and that's what I recommend, because otherwise you're not really engaged with the person. The sales niche would only be one or two of those calls, right? And when you ask for sales, be very specific. what do you want and how much you want, right? I think that is really very important, and that is how you really stay engaged. And if you do that, that will improve your conversion ratios. So I'll just conclude with some comments and then open up for questions. So basically, I just want to capture some of the winning habits for business development. First and foremost is maintaining a CRM system. Whatever I've shared, in my process here, you cannot do it without a good CRM. And CRM can be a simple Excel sheet as well. It can be a diary. It doesn't really matter. But where do you record so that you know who the people you are in touch with and what is the next step that you want to do with them, right? So that's the way really you use this CRM system. Uh, then again, you want to maximize the face time with clients. So I always say that all our days into travel, food, gossip, servicing, face time with clients. So you need to minimize the red zone and maximize the green zone. But I'll give you two examples of some very successful people, and you'll find that when you really understand what worked for them, you will realize that why you need to build a system. Why is it that you cannot do it without a system? It cannot be the okay, today I'm in a mood, let's go and build business. Tomorrow I'm not, so I don't really bother about it. So one great example is of Joe Girard. His name is listed in the Guinness Book of World Records, and he was a salesman at Chevrolet. And if you look at it in terms of numbers, the 15 years that he was there, he sold about 13,000 cars and one car at a time. So no bulk deals. His best day sales were 18, and best month was 174, and the best year is 1425. And I have checked with my car dealer here that what's a great month, and according to them, if they sell 8 to 10 cars a month, they've done a fantastic job. And just imagine this guy, and Chevrolet may not be the best of cars as well, by the way, right? But what was the secret of his of his success? And so in his book, he writes that I'm so organized it's sickening. I never sold a car in my life. I sold Joe Girard. People buy people, and that's what people buy. So basically, what he was saying is that look, the differentiation is not in products. The differentiation is the experience that people go through, and that experience is by me, right? So he took complete ownership of the sales. It was not that, oh, my products are bad or this is bad, the environment is bad. It was all about the experience people go through. In fact, he writes in his book, if somebody ever bought a car and there was a problem, he would tell his client that, look, don't worry about it, just leave it to me and I'll get it sorted. So he would really make the clients comfortable. Now, in those days, there was no WhatsApp, but just imagine he used to send a card every single month, right? And I talked about engagement some time back. So, and that's why I say that you need to engage at least once a month. And engagement, in my view, is not what you do with clients, but what clients do to you, because then the client has really recognized. And in those days, because he could not get that feedback, he writes in his book that he would use different colors of or different kind of ways of reaching out to clients so it doesn't get lost in the broader mail. And every month he would write, okay, January, Happy New Year, Happy Valentine's Day, so on and so forth. And best is in August, he'll say, okay, if you give me a customer, I'll give you $50 and so on. And most importantly, his cards were always handwritten and signed by him. So he writes in his book that when he retired, he was sending 29,000 such cards on a monthly basis. And that was the secret of his success. So he was so organized. He was doing it, with purpose all the time. The second example is from insurance, and perhaps so. If you have heard of Don Bradman in cricket, in insurance industry, Mehdi is the Don Bradman of insurance industry, and you can see from his numbers. We talk about the $1 million concept. He did that in 1960s, and now you adjust it for inflation. You know what kind of numbers he did, and look at what he did by 1980, about $50 million of business. So he was a. So I used to work for MetLife, and he was the god in MetLife, and his income was more than the CEO of MetLife, right? So, by the way, in our industry, also you'll see that many of you earn maybe better than many of the AMC CEOs. Once you get scale in the business, you really earn that much, and that's why it's such a fantastic business to be in. So, Mehdi Fakhrizadeh also, when you ask him, he also summarizes his success in two words: service and habits. And I really like this part. I'll just read out the second part here, which I've written, that he explains how to perform inward personal analysis and migrate from your poor habits to great ones through simple guided introspection, a simple checklist, and daily attention to desired results. So if you really want to build a large business, you have to be sensitive enough and ensure that your every single day is really used in a very meaningful manner. So I will halt here and open up for questions. So I know it has been quite a mouthful in terms of you know taking you through the complete deck as of now, but I'll be very happy to really take any questions that you may have. So we'll open up for questions now. Yeah, thanks, Bhavish, for your feedback, and great, Sridhar, to hear from you. So, if you have any questions, so do you? Is this possible for you to speak, or is it only through a chat that you can mention?
No, they can unmute and they can put their questions.
Okay, great. Yeah. Yeah. So Mahesh has a question that how do you engage with clients on a regular basis? So let me answer that. So my view is that if you really want to engage on a regular basis, the first thing is to have some kind of a mechanism where you can record the engagement, right? So let me give you an example. First of all, you need to define what engagement is, right? So in my view, what you do with the client is, I don't count it as engagement. It is a response from the client that is counted as engagement, because it shows that there was the person has recognized what you have written and they have responded. So just to give an example, if you wish somebody on Diwali and you don't get a thank you message back, then you're not engaged, because it's a one way communication. If you send a monthly account statement and there was no question asked on the monthly account statement, that's not counted as engagement. So if you start tracking every single month that have you got a response from your client, I think that's the most powerful way to engage. In my book, I explain this concept called the engagement index, where I say that, okay, if you've got, let's say, 50 clients, how many of them really responded to any of your conversations or reached out on their own to really get some business, or reached out to you in some form, and that I count as engagement. And typically, as I mentioned, at least with the A and B guys, you need to have 100% engagement index. So that's the way you really stay engaged. And in terms of calls, as I mentioned, you cannot really be always talking for sales. So you have to have, you can wish them on birthdays, anniversaries. You can send them some interesting updates about what's happening in the market. You can comment on some very untoward events which keep happening in the market from time to time. And I think, and then getting into a conversation on that in some way, right? So that is what is very important here. So Harshit has a, so I hope I've answered that question, Mahesh. So Vishal has a question: how do we follow up with a client but avoid giving him a feeling of bothering him, or doing the same? Ideally, how many times one should be following up? So Vishal, that's a very good question, and the way I would suggest you should follow up is that, see, when you have done a pitch to your client and agreed on and made a proposal saying, okay, why don't we consider buying these three funds, and the client says yes, yes, I'll just think about it and come back to you. Now, when he tells you that I'll come back to you, you need to interject and say that, look, if I don't hear from you in the next 2 weeks, is it okay if I were to reach out and remind you? So every time you conclude a meeting, you should ensure that your client knows when the next meeting will happen or when the next call will happen. Similarly, if you're doing a portfolio review, for example, you say that, okay, the next review I'll be doing then, and in case you have any questions in between, do reach out. Otherwise, I'll reach out to you 3 months from now or 1 month from now. So then the client knows that, okay, this person will reach out. So many a times what we do is that the guy says, okay, I'll get back to you, and he says, okay, fair enough. And then we are wondering, should I call up? Will I be stepping on the shoes of the guy? Am I being too pestery? So my view, the best way to do that is if you can really look at ensuring that your follow up is done in a manner where you already have the permission from the client to call that person. So you can actually follow up as long as the client says no. So my view is very clear on this subject. that you stop following up unless the if the client dies or you get business. So till then you keep following up. So that's my view. Once you've made up your mind that this will be an ideal client for me. So Harshit has a question. The referral script that you have, is that supposed to be sent over WhatsApp, call, or in person? So typically that's a WhatsApp script. But if somebody is going to call someone and say, you can just tell him that, look, this is what you should be telling the guy, right? So but generally people would write a WhatsApp and connect you. So I've just built that script for that. But yeah, if somebody wants to just call and use something else, they are perfectly fine. You're just volunteering from your side that I can make your job very simple. So Shruti, thank you very much. So that's good. And then how to tackle any goof ups which are by mistake but affects a client in some way. Well, that's a very good one again. And then that essentially my view is that if you have built a personal connect, with a client, then the client will excuse you if you goof up a bit. But if you don't have a connect, then it is really going to be a troublesome, because first you will never even know at times that there was a goof up, because you'll only see a redemption and sometime later you realize it. But if you stay in constant connect, my view is that if there's any mess up, the client will call you and say, hey, this is happening and please get it addressed, so you get a chance to solve it. But otherwise, if you're goofed up, I still feel that you should stay in touch with clients, right? Don't pester him to come back, but just spend time, because the client eventually goes to somebody else, and that other person also will goof up at some stage in the future. So if you stay in touch, then chances are you get the client back at that time. So obviously, prevention is better than cure. So you should always start by saying, okay, uh, So for example, in this is a question I'd asked my son, that if a client were to leave you, on what condition should the client never leave you? What is in your assessment, the most important elements? And we agreed on two parts. One was the fact that the client should not leave just because we are not in touch. So that is inexcusable, because if you're a client, you should stay in touch. And the second was that there should be no goof up in the not goof up or blow up in their portfolio. So you don't give such aggressive products that the person is unable to digest, right? So even if you take high risk products, the way you construct that portfolio is very, very important. So a blow up is something which the client doesn't anticipate and happens. So you need to figure out ways of avoiding that. So these are the two things that drive us completely. So there's another question, that as a young distributor, how does one convert prospects while tackling the problem of them having, well, even if you're young, right? My view is that one of the things you can do is find somebody, right? So typically, if you can make a few calls with somebody who can help you on your calls initially and help you bridge that age issue, I think that can be very helpful. But if it's not, I don't think so. You should be defensive. I think you should still remain, engaged with clients. And as I have, shared, once you build a relationship, then age really doesn't matter. It's only in the initial stages when somebody is talking to you will that assessment happen. So if you know the subject well and you're well prepared for your meetings, age is not a criteria. The best example here is, you look at any banking or broking firm, they're all hiring fresh MBAs from various colleges and saying, why don't you become, financial advisors? Of course, they send you to the, clients in the bank, and they have support systems of their bosses in some sense. But in reality, I have not seen any bosses really being very helpful. And those 25-year-olds are on their own figuring out the business. So you should not be really worried about saying, oh, I'm very young, and that should not really be an issue. So let's go to the next question. If the client calls himself for the meeting and don't turn up on the day of the meeting multiple times, then what should you do? Now, okay, if the client has really made this as a habit that they give you a meeting and they don't turn up, then they don't respect you at all. I don't want such clients. But if occasionally it happens, I think it happens to all of us. So if it's a habit with the client, I think you should give up the client. Personally, I don't like such clients. And you must believe that there's enough business for you in the market, and yeah, you can be respectful to the client. You don't have to go and tell the client, hey, I'm going to give up. If you don't follow up, you don't call up, the guy will say at most a day, this guy never reaches out to me. So what you do at that stage is you ensure to wean off the client. If they call you, you must service well, but otherwise you should not to, you are not initiating that deal further. Not everyone is your client, as I mentioned, right? So getting some basic respect is very, very vital. So, Bhavesh, how do you deal with rejections, especially in our industry? The main problem being direct regular plans and pass back in insurance. Well, Bhavesh, it's a it's like if I quote Mehdi, right? He used to always say he never wanted to be an insurance agent, right? And so much so that one day decided that he will give up and wanted to resign. But then he decided, okay, I will resign once I'm very successful. And his boss used to always tell him that, look, if you can get 10 clients to say I'll give you an X amount of money. And I think a similar example I've heard from Brian Tracy as well. So he said our business is to collect no's, right? Because typically you'll find is that I shared with you the closing ratio, right? It is 3%, and then eventually it grows to 30, 40 through constant engagement. So no should not really be putting you off. I think that's the normal part of the business. When we are ready for business, the client may not be ready at that time. I think that we need to accept as a reality. Yeah. So, what CRM software do you suggest? Do you use the plugin platform? Well, actually, a simple Excel sheet is good enough from an MFD perspective. You don't need a very elaborate CRM. And but if you want a few others, HubSpot is a good one which can be utilized. Then, of course, we have Zoho, which is the initial versions are actually free. You can try them out and then upgrade it to get some more features. But those are good features. Recently, I came across a CRM built for our industry, which is only a CRM. I think it's called Sanchay CRM or something. So that also can be utilized. But yeah, if you're on a platform with somebody, I don't think so. Many of the platforms will have meaningful CRM because nobody has really spent time thinking through. So in my assessment, what is important is that you should realize what all features in that CRM are important to you, and because you know all the conversations. So when you create a CRM software for organizations, you want to capture almost every detail, and that makes the CRM very bulky, right? And but from an organization perspective, it makes sense because people come and go, so they want to give the new RM all the information, and hence they have very elaborate CRM. But from an individual perspective, all you need to track is what whether the guy is an A, B, C, A plus Z. You want to track your engagement, that every month are you tracking with the guy. You want to track the number of referrals you're getting from them. You want to track how you're progressing in terms of your what you call sales process. And that, I think, even simple Excel sheets can do that for you. And even in my book, I've shared three simple CRM packages that you can use.
DRF.
Yeah,
And
Sridhar.
compliance but
Yeah, so Sridhar, I have your number. I'll call you. We'll discuss this more.
video पर तो सु आगे again.
Yeah. So I think I've taken most of the questions, but any other questions I've missed, so you can just unmute and ask me, or anything else, that'd be great.
Sir, thank you so much for the wonderful session. It was really insightful. Just wanted to ask, what are some of the activities that we can do for prospecting?
So as I mentioned, the two sources that you need to work really very hard is your referrals, and the second is the affiliation part. And I'll give you an example. So the referral ones I've tested, right? So I can tell you that you can blindly use it, you'll get great results. I'm doing some experiments now on the affiliation side. And so I've been talking to a lot of people that when you reach out to your friend, for example, or family, how do you really ask for it? And I'll give you an example. So we have recently an RM who joined us. So he said, look, my dad knows a few people and he's going to take me and introduce me to them, saying that I've joined this firm and I'm a mutual fund distributor. So he went with his dad and met three of his friends and came back. So I asked him that, look, now that you've been introduced, so what was your next step? And so he said, look, I've just told them that I'm in the business. I said, now the reality is, just because you met once with your dad doesn't mean that you'll get a business. So the first step I told him is that in the very first meeting, when you get introduced by someone like this, you tell the person that, hey, it's nice that dad has, or uncle or whoever has introduced you. Would you be okay if I come and see you in a week, and spend another 30 minutes with you? Because you need to go and give them some more update about how you do business, right? And in that discussion, you need to really be able to share with them the kind of personas you want to work with. So for example, I mentioned this, that look, I'm a mutual fund distributor, but most of my clients come to me because they struggle in their retirement years. So I'll help a lot of senior executives to transition, their portfolios, from when they are working to when they retire. So most of my clients are working with multinationals and they are 45 plus. And this is what I really do with them, and give them some flavor of how you engage with them, and then tell them that look, if you come across somebody, then do reach out. And then again, you use the engagement with them, right? So for the next few months, you need to stay engaged, send them some more information on the firm, just wish them on Diwali like you do with other clients, and then you increase your chances of getting an introduction from them, right? So I would encourage those kind of activities. I'm not a big fan of LinkedIn profiles and sending messages and cold calling. I really don't think so. You should go to stages. And the second thing which I feel which really helps is that if you really have somebody in mind you want to meet, try to figure out a person who can introduce you to that person, because the trust deficit is the biggest thing that you want to cover, and any introduction from a known source of that person, right, I think can make a big difference. So I really spend more time trying to figure out, okay, I want to meet this guy, I don't know him, but can I have somebody else? So as I mentioned, when I wrote my book, I wanted to sell my book in bulk. So there were so I know maybe many of the CEOs personally, but it's a large industry. I don't know every single CEO today, and I'm out of the industry for the last 5 years. So I had a list of about 5, 7 names where the CEO was new. I had never met the person, and I wanted to meet. So what I did is I tried to figure out somebody who's known to me and that particular CEO, and I got my introductions. And then when I went and I talked about my book, the receptivity was far greater than any other mode that I would have used. So that's the kind of activity I recommend. So all I would say is don't go to strangers. Chances of getting results are very, very poor. Yeah. Anything else? I hope I answered your question, Harshit. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Sir, can you elaborate a bit more on passive referral?
So passive referral, as I mentioned, is a referral where you didn't ask for, but the client on their own said, "Hey, why don't you work with my friend?" So that's a passive referral. So let me tell you. So I shared with you the active referral technique. Now what happens is that once. So let's take an example here. You went to somebody, you made that pitch, and that person ended up giving you a couple of introductions, right? Now when you get those introductions, you have to give the feedback loop back to your client that look, I met with this guy, and I'll keep you posted of how things progress. So that reinforces the fact that he gave you a referral, and now you're keeping in touch and telling them how the business is progressing. So what happens is over time, the client actually gets into this habit of responding to you all the time, and typically what you'll find is that after a while, you really don't have to ask for referrals. It just becomes an automatic process of getting clients from them. And that, so active referrals eventually lead to passive referrals, and that is what you want to get to. So obviously, if you really stay engaged with your clients, you will see that this flow becomes very, very smooth. So today in our firm, for example, so all new clients, of course, we go and do the active referral technique, but what we find is many of our older clients, we get referrals on a very consistent basis. In fact, I must thank Dev and Aruna both for giving us referrals on a consistent basis, and both of them are also our clients. So that way, I think it's really a pleasure. So that's the way actually it works.
Thank you
So
so much.
ultimately, it's about getting the passive referrals.
Correct. That's what we want to get
That is
to.
the last. That is the
That's the
last.
last thing. Yeah. So if you stay engaged, you will get referrals. That I can assure you. The problem is, we just don't stay engaged enough. We forget. Because if you have 50 clients, now you can't track engagement with all 50 because you may not even have a proper CRM to do it. But if you become very deliberate about it, right, then you'll see that actually it works and gives you great results. So that would be my suggestion, Amir, for
Thanks, sir. Thanks,
speeding
sir.
on
Thanks.
referrals. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sanket, that selling without actually selling is important. And that's why I said that if you add value to your clients, that is what, and they perceive that, I think you have got your selling right there. But if you're forcing and just treating every feedback as an objection, then you're overly selling, and that's not a good idea. And insurance company, that's why I don't like insurance agents, because they are trained in life that anybody says something, it's an objection, and you need to have a great answer to respond to it. So you don't do that. Actually, that's not a great way to do. You should actually spend time and add great value to your clients in many ways, and you can do so much actually in that area. So we do portfolio review semi-annually. There are clients that are not interested in giving us time. Do you think what to do with this? Well, Kapil, you have to, that's again a good question. That see, not everybody is interested in a portfolio review. So you may think that, and again, when you do a CFP or something like that, you get into this whole need zone, and it says that okay, at the end of the meeting, you should set up these reviews on a regular basis. So my way is very simple. I always talk. So there are clients who want to do a portfolio review every month, and there are clients who are very happy even if you tell them once a year how things are. So I think you should adjust yourself to what the needs of the client is, and not be overly concerned about reviews. But there are many other ways that you can stay engaged, right? So as I mentioned, what is important is not the reviews only, but it's also the engagement. And I think if you do that on a successful basis, I think you will do extremely well. Seeking Google feedback is a good idea. Should we feed words in client's mouth while asking for the same? Well, if you're going to rely on introductions, then Google feedback is not as much relevant. I agree that if you have a digital presence, then of course you can build some social proof so people reach out to you. But yeah, if you are reaching out, then you should tell the person that, look, sir, I'll be very happy if you give me this particular feedback. A lot of my clients have given me feedbacks on other subjects, but can you do this a favor for me? Can you give me a feedback and can you include this? So you have to word it in a manner the client feels that okay, that's how I want to give in. So, but don't try to act, uh, don't be cheeky. Just be like honest about the feedback you need. So again, the same script can be used, right? Saying that look, a lot of people, check the Google forms. What are the ratings? Like today, if you want to go to a doctor, right? Many doctors also have those ratings. So people use that. So that's why I've been telling my clients, can they give me a review on Google on my website or whatever you are using there, and then tell them this is the specific one. If you can write for me, that's great. Any other questions? Thanks, Vishal. Yeah.
I think if there is no more questions, sir, should we end the session?
Yeah, we can. Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, sir, for doing this wonderful session. To all our esteemed clients, thank you so much, and yeah, looking forward to have similar events in future. And thank you everyone for joining us in this webinar.
Yeah.
See
So
you.
has a question here. Thank you. Where can we get the book? So my book is available on Amazon, so you can order it from there. Yeah, Harshit, and so
Excellent.
great. Thank you very
Yeah,
much.
thank you so much, and see you guys next Friday, the next webinar. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
All
Thank
the
you.
best. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Thanks,
Thank you
Arun.
so much, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks.